anytime we sort of take a defensive posture, the Americans win.
Yeah.
Anytime we take an aggressive offensive posture, we win. We
Yeah.
need to keep doing this. So that's why he loves Brock. He laments Brock's death.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
Yeah, he did.
so much because he didn't think
Yeah.
Proctor was up to the task.
Hello, welcome to the Stories of 1812 podcast. My name is Marinus Zaita. This is a series where we talk with special guests about the lives of the characters in the War of 1812, who they were, what their deeds were, their accomplishments, and why we should remember them. Today we have a very special guest. He is Dr. James Tyler Robertson. He's a professor at Tyndale University in Toronto, associate professor of Christian history. He teaches on the history of Christianity, as well as on Christianity generally and on evangelicism. I hope I got that right.
You did not.
I didn't. I didn't. Well, let me finish introducing you, and then you
sorry.
can correct me. You're the teacher here, not
I'm
me.
so sorry.
Okay.
I saw my opportunity to edit jokes.
That's good. His doctoral work was on religion in the War of 1812. He wrote a doctoral thesis about it, and he has a new book on the history of the church called Overlook, the church here in Upper Canada. Okay, James. Now, how did I mess it up?
It's very good. It's nice to be here. We'll move right past it.
Okay. Today we're going to look at one specific character in the War of 1812, and his name is Bishop John Strachan.
Yes.
Now, you don't spell it that way, do you? How did that happen? Is it because the Scottish CH is silent? Yeah.
There's no Scottish CHs. They're silent. It's
Oh, okay.
it's always a K sound. But yeah, there's a linguistic etymology there. But yeah, it is Strachan,
which the street sign says if
Yep.
you're traveling.
but it's not Strachan or Strachan.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
That's
Strachan.
right. Good. Well, I think that helps because people would say, "Oh, I've seen that name on a street sign somewhere." So now we know. Before we do that, though, we want to find out a little bit about you and how you got to this subject, because you are a professor of history.
Mhm.
What is it in history that you like, that attracts you, that brought you to this field?
First off, it's the love of stories.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm sure we've all had history teachers that somehow make history boring. But if you've made history, chances are you've lived a pretty interesting life. So I wanted to learn the examples of people that have lived a fantastic life, a diabolical life, a legacy, who put a legacy into the world, because it's always interesting for all sorts of reasons. And then it just kind of grew from there.
There's a little bit more, though. You have to tell us a little bit more about your nerdy self.
Oh my goodness!
Because you like hanging around in archives, wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nerdy. I love archives. I love research. I've said it's like being a very, very, very lame detective.
Mm.
So you've got a hunch, you've got clues, you're trying to find evidence to support what it is that you're doing. And yes, I've scheduled vacations around archives. I have a day in an archive is one of the best days in the world for me. I've gotten hungry. I've got dizzy. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm coming down with something, and realize I've been researching.
You forget to have lunch.
You forget to eat, and you're like, oh, my blood sugar's crashing. So yeah, I absolutely love it.
Just one other thing, though, that strikes me, and we've talked about this, is you don't like repeating the same mistakes that our ancestors, unless you're caught up in circumstances that are beyond your control.
Yes, my father's fond of saying only a fool makes all his own mistakes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of wisdom from listening to the people that have come before. And I like to say to my students too, it's about naming the voices in your head. And I don't mean that about in the capacity of like mental illness or anything, but we all think a bunch of stuff that has been informed by people in the past. And so getting to know who those people are, getting to know the context of why they came up with that idea, I've always found very fascinating. And sometimes it helps us actually let go of some ideas that we think are very, very important, but maybe ultimately are harmless.
And we find out, we think it's an original idea, and there it was back there. Somebody thought of it.
Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try and tackle the life of Bishop John Strachan, and it is it's a potential minefield. So we're going to approach it slowly. So, first of all, if we could, at a very high level, approach it from his achievements.
Sure.
So, how, and why do we remember him? Because he had to do with educational institutions, some of which, we know, the clergy reserves, and the advancement of the church.
Hmm.
So we take those things apart a little bit. What would people recognize in those things?
Yeah, good point. John Strachan, I love. There's a couple of really interesting elements about this. So when we look at pre-Confederation Canadian history, and of course, Confederation taking place on the 1st of July in 1867, John Strachan is a fantastic, unique example that he really comes to prominence in 1812,
Mhm.
and he dies in 1867.
1867, yeah,
67. So
yeah.
he's almost the he's the greatest insight into a lot of the social causes of what would become Ontario and then what ultimately would become Canada.
Mhm.
And he's in all levels from municipal stuff in Toronto. So obviously a very, very significant part. He used to sign the name John Toronto. Sometimes he would sign his name as John Toronto. So we all know how Toronto. I was saying Toronto, but
Yeah,
Toronto.
we drop a few letters in it.
We drop a few, but
Yeah.
he was involved
Yeah.
in provincial policy making, education, immigration, the churches. So he's on every level. He was a member of the Family Compact, which we can get into if we want to,
Yeah.
but very instrumental in the pre-Confederation Canadian developments, and his fingerprints are over all of it.
Great. Okay. Let's start a little earlier though, because the rest of our audience probably wants a bit of a chronology to who this man was. Born in 1778 in Aberdeen,
Hmm.
and as you mentioned, died in Toronto. Um, he went to Aberdeen Grammar School. He lost his father at an early age.
16, yeah.
Yeah, and then he took on teaching,
Yeah.
which was to be his strength
Yeah.
over his life.
Yeah, he went to King's College, very famous school
Yeah.
in Scotland. It was at a fairly low academic ebb, as they say. It wasn't doing great academically,
Mm.
but he would have a lifelong love of learning. Really realized the necessity of learning. He would get there. So, and he was going to go on, but then he didn't have a patron. Like you said, his father died when he was young, so he had no money, no real ability to go on to further education in Scotland, and that's when he got the possibility of coming to Upper Canada, which is what he did. So, I brought him from Scotland, and he arrived here in December 31st, last day of the year, in the year of our Lord 1799.
99.
So literally 1800 is his first day in Canada.
I want to just stay to his early formation a little bit in Scotland, because there was something about, and he will go on, we'll talk about it in a moment, because he was so important in the early education
Mhm.
of the elite in Upper Canada. But what was it about his method, which of teaching, like he should, or I think he was probably early adept at understanding the strengths and weaknesses of students. Because when you're teaching, you're a professor yourself.
Mhm.
Is there a formula in there? So you grab a student's aptitude and you kind of feed on that to
Yeah.
get them to. Is there any? What do you think happened?
I think not having a formula is the formula.
Okay.
The fact that he was very opinionated, very strong, very
Yeah.
prolific writer, clearly a good mind. The culture of the time did not allow him to go on to advancing, so we don't know how far he could have advanced. But he was also very aware of where he wanted the society and the culture to be. Keep in mind, he's looking at, he's going to be in the Church of England, but he's a Scot. So he's looking at.
And he grew up Presbyterian.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's looking at it from that sort of outsider lens.
Yeah.
And I would say for Canadians listening to this, it's in a similar way how we look at America. Like it's our TV, but there is a sort of a half a step difference because it is a different country, it's a different culture. So I think that gives him a lot of perspective on what it is that he's trying to formulate when he's coming here, and he recognizes that education of the young is a very important step, and that will stay a mantra of his throughout his whole life.
Well, it was formative because there were very few schools, there were very few people. And he established his own school, but just before I go there,
yeah,
just before I go there, and you alluded to it, he had a very conservative point of view, to say the least.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
Where do you think that came from?
His upbringing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not on that way. He's not a mystery. Like he ends up in the Church of England. He's very much a royalist, a loyalist. He's not overly taken with Republican American, he does again with his ability to listen. He does sort of bring in some American ideas ultimately, but definitely not in the early
But
parts
what
of the
about the
19th.
12 years that he spent in Kingston, right?
Right.
Because that's before he came to York. We're going to talk about the Cornwall School in a moment, but he had mentors and he was still a young man.
Yeah.
So
Well,
he
he needed
had,
patrons. Yeah.
and he had patrons.
Hmm.
Didn't they have some effect on the growth of his, conservatism or the deepening of his conservatism?
Yeah.
Because they were as well in the same, how would you say it, the same stream.
Yeah.
Anglicanism,
And
country, monarchy.
exactly. And this is
Yeah.
what will help sort of form the family compact, which we kind of,
Yeah.
it's not it happens for lack of a better term somewhat organically, but he's there to educate the children of the elite
Yeah.
in the colony.
Yeah.
And so what you are teaching the children is absolutely essential. How are you inculcating them with British ideas, British sensibilities, giving them a lot of Latin and Greek and experience,
Classic education.
classic education, exactly
Yeah.
what we call a
Yeah.
classic education, but
Yeah.
also in grammar, communicating well.
Yeah.
But what is the motivation behind that? Well, that's to become good colonial British subjects and citizens,
Yeah.
highly articulate, highly intelligent, well read, and able to influence. So you're dealing with things like law,
Yeah.
medicine to a certain extent, and then of course divinity. But these are all, and then politics, all the things that are the foundations of good society, be it in the metropolis of London, up in Glasgow or Edinburgh, or down in the colonies of British North America.
So he starts a school in
Several of them.
1803.
Mhm.
The Cornwall School is
Yep.
the one I'm thinking of.
Grammar, yep.
And he's going to be there about 10 years before he goes to York.
Yep.
And a couple of things about that school. One is it wasn't just Anglicans. He had, whoever they were, Methodists, Lutherans, Catholics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some letters where, again, back, and so he gets ordained by Bishop Jacob Mountain, who's in Quebec.
Right.
And so this becomes one of his art is like, how are we going to give education, a liberal education, a conservative, but by liberal in the realms of other religion? And I kind of go back and forth with that because he is very vocally opposed, as we can get to, with Methodists and Baptists, like very, very problematic.
But he still taught them, though, right?
He's going to teach everybody because, of course, he wants to convert them.
But did the curriculum of the school, just to clarify, was it Church of England curriculum?
Yes.
Okay.
But also, so when we're talking about other religion, he is taking, and that would be the Catholics, the French and the Catholics, because this is the sticky wicket of the colonial life. Is that the French Catholics are numerous and they are constitutionally protected by the monarchy.
And they are in Eastern Ontario,
of course,
where he is at the moment.
And again, back to the Scottish, we're a lot of the regiments that came up after the other side of the Revolutionary War, for the Scottish, for the Presbyterians, their battle is always with getting them Presbyterian, especially if you have the Scots who are Catholic.
Okay. So I want to mention one name of a student that he taught, because this fellow became very well known in Upper Canada, JBR, John Beverly Robertson, who also, not only was he Attorney General of Upper Canada, but he was one of Brock's boys. He fought at the Battle of Queenston Heights with Brock. He became somewhat of an adopted son of Strong's, and also his closest friend, apparently.
Yeah, they were very tight.
Yeah. And what was it about that relationship? Did anything come to mind? What was it that he adopted him? That JBR, as we as historians like to call him, was himself open to that kind of education?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, they clearly had, like, it starts off like it's a mentorship.
Yeah.
Like Strawn is, it's a mentorship thing. So it becomes a question of, like, is this a father figure kind of thing, or probably more of like a wise older brother?
And he was young too.
Exactly.
JBR, when he was 12 years old when he was became an orphan. Well, not an orphan.
Not an orphan, but
his father died.
Yeah, they're going to stay close through both their adult lives. And of course, John Beverly Robertson is very influential. And again, he's going to look to Strawn for wisdom, for guidance. They are going to be thick as thieves.
Well, we see that in some of the legal decisions that he handed down.
Absolutely.
About the Bloody Aziz and other things. But we'll come back, I think, to John Beverly in a moment. So Strawn had initially 20 students. It's reported he had around 40, which was a steady number, and they were from all parts of the province.
Yeah.
It's also that he had a very unique approach to teaching, which probably would be of interest to us today. He had a very intricate system of rewards and competitions. And he let, well, we call it discipline, but he let the boys kind of run it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't spent a ton of time looking into what it is, like his pedagogy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Like, yeah, I would actually be like, I'd love to learn what you have on his pedagogy.
So you're making me the expert. I'm not the expert. I'm prompting you. Right?
No,
but
I don't do a ton with like the pedagogy in the early parts of it and whatnot. But
okay, yeah, we're going to get to the interesting parts where he starts taking on the American general, which we all want to hear about in a second. But I think what was important to the later formation of them and the elite are the values that he instilled in his students, like patriotism, civic duties, loyalty, monarchy, order. You know, JBR, as we mentioned, Attorney General. I mean, he didn't want to pass capital punishment as a result of that historical incident, but he found that he had to.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a pretty strict sentence to bring down as the as the officer, as the legal officer.
Here's the thing about strong suit. I think about a lot of the stuff we forget. Like they're immigrants to here. It's a risky endeavor.
Yeah.
And it's that's piled up with things like the War of 1812. We have like the rebellions and stuff. Like this is a violent enterprise, and there's a sense of like once you've established a beachhead, once you're trying to grow this thing, you got to be a little bit careful about how much of this is going to be.
Well,
you need to be a deterrent.
You're in a war. I mean, I don't know exactly when the Bloody Seas was. It was either during the war.
You're talking about 1813, down like present day Dundas and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's very. I'm sure he found it a very difficult decision, but I'm sure that he consulted Strawn. I've not seen the correspondence to that. It's probably somewhere, but there are those values that Bishop Strawn inculcated in him as a young student.
Yeah, I mean, at the time we're talking now, so I'm going to call him Reverend Strawn because he's not bishop for a while till after the War of 1812. Okay. So he's Reverend, ordained by Jacob Mountain. But he's very much an advocate for the best defense is a good offense. And he says repeatedly, and when he's writing to Brock, when he's writing to John Beverly Robinson, when he's writing to McGill in Montreal, when he's writing to anybody who he sends letters to all over the place, Scottish philosophers, William Wilberforce, of course, the famous abolitionist, he writes to all sorts of people on a whole variety of topics. But his point being is like anytime we sort of take a defensive posture, the Americans win. Anytime we take an aggressive offensive posture, we win. Yeah. We need to keep doing this. So that's why he loves Brock. He laments Brock's death.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
he did.
So much because he didn't think Brock was up to the task.
So his life gets a little more interesting. In 1812, June of 1812, just before the war was declared in the middle of June.
Yep.
And he moves to York. And Brock, a good connection with Brock, offered him the chaplaincy of the garrison.
Yeah, Brock's probably pretty inspired. Like, he wanted to go to Kingston. Because John Stewart had passed away, so he thought he was a shoo-in for Kingston.
Okay.
But then Stewart's widow wanted their son, who was at York, to take over for his father, George O'Kill Stewart. And so and Strawn was he didn't really want to go to York. It seems like, but Isaac Brock convinced him to.
Tell us a story about him standing in the helm of the boat. Yeah.
See, and this is a guy that deserves a little bit of myth. Yeah. So as a historian, you're always trying to find these sources, and it's debatable, and it could be strong and self-aggrandizing as well. But this is a guy that I'm a little bit comfortable. Like the myths should stick around this guy, and so the idea is on his way, he's on a ship and whatnot, and war's been declared. So this is where the chronology. You're like, and he's on a boat, and they see a boat on the distance, and they think it's the Americans on Lake Ontario. Right. And the captain of his boat, which is just full of like men, women, and children, no soldiers and stuff like that, panics, and Strawn jumps to the helm. And he takes control of the ship, and it turns out that the ship that they saw in the distance was just another barge. Like it was another civilian thing. There was no threat whatsoever. But that kind of categorizes the guy, and I think fairly that he'll give it a second, but if nobody jumps forward, he's going to jump forward, and that categorizes his life.
And we're going to come back to that in a second.
It could be apocryphal. I do want to say that, but it does stand to it.
Could be predictive of future behavior.
Thank you very much.
He's a big proponent. A big supporter of Brock. And the first major battle in the War of 1812 was Brock. Fort Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And he took this to the pulpit,
Yeah.
and he said, that brilliant victory has been of infinite service to confirming the wavering and adding the spirit to the loyal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he didn't mince words.
No,
Now,
not
that's
ever.
important we say that because we're going to hear more about him.
Yeah.
The guy just didn't back down. And
No.
in today's world, we maybe don't have too many men of that character.
I'll reserve comments on that. Yeah, because I do like people that I don't. Mincing words could also be genuinely listening and changing opinion. A time of war maybe wasn't the best place to do that, but yes, he was unwavering in his conviction and beliefs in it.
He put action to words.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
because he supported the militia. He got the ladies of York to knit, I think, clothing or sweaters or scarves or something.
Well, I mean, he helped organize the Loyal and Patriotic Society of Upper Canada, which was a profound social organization.
You're reading my script upside down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
so you can be the next. Yes. So the recognition that this is a battle in our home.
Yeah.
This is a threat to hearth and home.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's a social rank. These are not just soldiers dying on a field. These are fathers, sons, brothers, and stuff like that. And it's also people losing their livelihoods. So we need to address all that.
And he had, he may have been a political figure as well, but he had the heart of a parish priest.
And again, for that time period, those two things are not separate spheres necessarily.
Yeah.
Because he's a Church of England clergyman. That's
I'm
the
thinking
establishment.
of it in today's term. Good point. Yeah.
So there's a blending of like to be a Church of England clergyman here is to be a political person because this is the spiritual underpinning of all the policies of colonial and British life.
So fast forward. Well, we're not fast forwarding that much, but we're in York in April 1813.
1813.
And the Americans invade.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened is Schaeff, who succeeded Brock, he set off the Potter magazine.
Yes.
But then he left. He didn't treat it. So he left it to the citizens or the notables of York to negotiate terms with General Dearborn.
The Dearborn.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard move when you know you're going to lose. You don't want your enemy getting any of your supplies and stuff like that. But I think what maybe people need to know is like it's a massive explosion. There's a tremendous amount of damage, fatalities, that sort of stuff. So it really sets the Americans off as this was a cowardly maneuver. This cost lives and whatnot. So
they're a little upset.
They're a little upset.
Right.
Some things don't change. You do your best not to upset the American military. That definitely holds true today. So there's a sense that, yes, the town surrenders. And of course, in civilized warfare, there's orders of capitulation.
Yes.
So this idea that the vanquishers can't treat the vanquished in any way, shape, or form. Like this is a civilized government.
But they didn't do that.
They didn't
started
do that.
Looting.
And it's a contract.
Yeah.
It is a contract that comes back.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of back and forth. Like, we're going to take this from you. You're going to do this. So there is a little bit of a negotiation. So while negotiations are happening over, we'll say 3 days, it's sort of understood as like, okay, we've beaten. So the people of York, with Strachan as their, we'll just say de facto mayor, really the leader, they've said, oh, this is what we want to Dearborn. And he's taken a little bit of time to ratify the terms. So technically, there's no contract being sold.
There's no signature.
There's no signature. So technically, the Americans can maybe have a little bit of fun kicking the inhabitants of York a little bit and taking the revenge without technically breaking the law, but it's bad form.
Yeah.
So again, could be apocryphal, but there's a story that some soldiers are walking with some stuff that they've stolen from a notable family member, and Strachan tackles an American soldier right in the street and drills him down, absolutely scandalized by this, and has probably a few muskets pointed right at him and will not back down.
A little unusual for a clergy.
For a clergyman to be a little bit physical. Not that unusual, but it's pretty unusual. Yeah, you're right. And anyway, the long and short of it, he gets up before Dearborn and chastises the American general for purposely delaying it so that his soldiers could have a little bit of revenge. And two, the amazing part, Dearborn relents. And signs. And the orders of capitulation are put into law for both then and again when the Americans come back several months later, too.
And that wasn't the only time, first of all, that the Americans invaded York, because in July they came again. And what did our friend John Strachan do then?
It's a very similar story. Like, we're just kind of right back into it. Like he the overarching thing that we want to say with Strawn in York is very much the fact that he becomes the leader of the town. I do like to say he's the de facto mayor.
Yeah.
He is the leader, both spiritually, politically, but also organizing all this different stuff, and does genuine care for the people in his parish and in his town.
It's so interesting because I don't think we see characters like that today. We may see aspects of that, but you combine it with clergy, you combine it with parishioner work, the spiritual leadership of the people, and the political aspect of it all in one guy.
Yeah, you could use the term Renaissance.
Yeah.
And again, it's a tricky thing now because when we look back 200 years ago, there is a sense that was just expected because we see similar things with Addison down in Niagara. We see similar things with Pollard down in Amherstburg and whatnot. They are the spiritual social hubs of these towns.
Yes.
And so people are going to look to them for genuine leadership.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they answer the call.
And they provided it, but not only in a spiritual way, but in a political, defensive,
social way. The amount of energy for him riding around. And again, Addison gets on it. Again, we'll go back to the Loyal and Patriotic Society of Upper Canada. That is if anybody's ever been on a social committee volunteer trying to raise money and stuff like that, you know how time consuming that can be. And he's on the executive meetings.
That's right.
He's going around soliciting donations. And when we think of churches nowadays soliciting donations, I'm hoping, and probably a lot of people that's when your red flag goes up. How much money's going into the minister's hands and stuff like that? None of it. Yeah. He donated money to it as well. So it's a true self-sacrificial endeavor to make sure that the families of the soldiers as well as the soldiers themselves are being well taken care of because it immediately supersedes their budget. So they're constantly fundraising.
Okay. So he comes out of the War of 1812, which ends in 1814, with certainly an enhanced reputation.
100%.
And he leverages that because he's a member of what was then the Executive Council. I think he also joined the Legislative Council, was a system of governance in Upper Canada at the time. And he used his political position to do a couple of things, didn't he, in the years after the war? He wanted to build educational institutions.
Yes.
He was concerned about the church and the clergy reserve. And I think it worked for a while.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's right around the turn of the century. It sort of focuses more on the church. So right now he's very much in the policy place. And as it goes to King's College, which of course will become the University of Toronto, his bid for that is in the wake of the War of 1812. This is proof that American ideologies are very problematic to the point of actual physical violence and the death and destruction they brought. If we're going to send our young people who need education in law, medicine, politics, whatever, all the only options we really have is to send them to America, to the schools in America. And how are they going to learn? They're going to learn American ideologies.
Yes,
they're going to learn arithmetic, but they're also going to learn American arithmetic.
Yeah.
And his major argument is all these students will come up and these will be the future policymakers. So of course, he's got John Beverly Robinson in his mind. Look at the influence this young man is having under my education.
Yeah.
If we send all of our best and brightest down there, one, we might lose into America for jobs or all sorts of other stuff. But two, the ones that come back are going to be unduly influenced by American ideas. Therefore, they're going to change some of our policies. And over time, we'll be indistinguishable from America. This is how they're going to take us away from America.
So, we remember him from the War of 1812, but in the post-war period, which is greater in terms of years, maybe we could just stick for a moment on building of education. It's a tremendous institution building time, right? In Canada. And maybe we could just stick to the educational institution because I think he first wanted to build a grammar school,
which he did in Cornwall successfully.
Which he did in Cornwall, but when he got to Toronto, he then pursued his interest in establishing a university, which needed a charter from the British government, which he pursued.
Yeah, it needs a charter from the
king. That went well for a while, but then the reform got in, and they secularized it. So take us through that story, how he tried to build it, and then how it was taken away, if you like.
Yeah, it's a great story. So John Strawn's a man of convictions. I mean, I always like to say at 22, he wrote his own autobiography. And in some ways, that's all you need to know about the guy. 22, when you write your own autobiography. So how he frames the charter is he leans heavily on the War of 1812 as proof that we cannot have American sympathies. This is what's going to ruin British North America. And it's a very infant, like you're right about the building. Like there's still not a lot of structures here, so we got to build these structures up. So in order to have a university education, we've got to keep, and we'll just put the Methodists. The Methodists are the biggest American spiritual threat that Strachan is facing.
Mm.
He's got some issues with the Presbyterian Church, ironically, over establishment status. He thinks his Church of England should have the only establishment status and the Scots should not have it at all.
Well, wasn't that the basis for the original approach?
Yes,
the charter for the university.
It comes out of that.
So it was approved, but was it approved originally as a church university? And how from there did it get secular?
So in essence, he basically, I'll just say this. He falsified the sentiments of Upper Canadians, probably right up falsified some numbers, and basically made the argument that we need to have an all Anglican faculty.
Yeah.
That's the only way to protect the colony.
Yeah.
And the king's people, the councillors, assent.
Hmm.
Then you get the reformers getting into power in 1828. And the reformers are like, this is absolute hooey.
Yeah.
He's like, you have to understand that a Methodist Upper Canadian is just as loyal as an Anglican Upper Canadian. And while we understand establishment works in England, here if you give us the choice, and it's worded beautifully, don't make the king make us choose between our God and our king.
Yes.
Because you want good Christians, and let us always choose our God. But
they're not the voice of God, though. Wasn't that what he said?
What I think, he's like the king. Like he will find no more loyal subjects than us.
Yeah.
Whether we're Methodist, Baptist, Lutheran, or whatever. That's not that we're not Anglican because we can't get to an Anglican church, or because the university's got Methodists or whatever they're concerned with. He's like, we're Methodists because that's our conviction, but we're loyal Methodists.
Yeah.
We'll fight a war for you, and that's, I think, becomes the sticking point for the councillors across the sea, and actually, ironically, somewhat helps Strachan, because what they're saying is like establishment, a good British system. It's like, you know what? Maybe separate the church and the state a little bit. And what does that sound like?
Well, and I think 1849, 1850, the Baldwin
Act,
then secularized the university. But I was just going to say that wasn't the end of it, because we still have Trinity College.
Yeah, and I mean that becomes a good thing. But the point being is they sound like Madison's, the Federalists, the separation of church and state. And this is what Strachan says. He's like, see, exactly. So it starts off with King's College, but then the Baldwin Act in the 1840s, it basically gets changed. It's like, regardless of your sect, the sectarian stuff, we're going to have education for all Upper Canadians, and we shouldn't have people of the Methodists. And this is the large sort of swing towards more the secularization of the clergy reserve. This is the big swing towards it. And I mean, we forget too that Queen's University, that's why we have King's College, we have Queen's University getting formed right around that time as well, to help address the fact that we need to have people who are not Anglican getting education, and women getting education so that they can do female missions and nurse work and that sort of stuff.
So without him, what would we not have? I mean, we can say, first of all, Trinity College, University of Toronto, even though it was secularized, but these institutions, you could argue, couldn't have been built, or the momentum wasn't there unless he initiated it.
Oh, absolutely.
They didn't. They were not in the form that he wanted.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this becomes increasingly, Strachan goes more and more into his own particular church. Because you're right. So that's why I like to say, like, his fingerprints are all over this.
Yeah.
Like, higher education in Canada is John Strachan's baby. Even though, as you said perfectly, like all of our children, they go off and do their own thing and make the parents scandalized and heartbroken by the choices they make. But the University of Toronto would not exist without John Strachan.
Yeah.
A lot of policies that define Ontario now would not have been possible without John Strachan, even though by the end of it, they didn't look like what he wanted. He was trying to form a wee Britain.
Yeah.
So again, as a Scottish person looking at England, he's like, how do we make that the most way here? And the funny part is, after 1815, after the War of 1812, when you get more British immigrants coming over here, the Britain they're coming from doesn't look like the Britain that he's trying to set up there. So he finds the British subjects as frustrating as anybody to his own goals.
He had other battles. He had lots of battles, and he enjoyed fighting.
Yeah, I think,
And the other battle he had was over the clergy reserve.
Right.
And whatever it was, 1/7 of the land was reserved in Canada
for the Church of England.
And for the Church of England. And then there was a big fight over that in the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s. tell us a little bit about that, because he wanted to sell them. He was successful in selling
Absolutely.
them and getting revenues to help strengthen the church.
And the funny part is,
Yeah.
it ties into the War of 1812 because in Newark, Niagara on the Lake, St. Andrews, they burned the steeple. The Americans did because it's a good sniper's nest.
Yes.
So for practical reasons, they destroy it. In about 1820, the Presbyterians appeal to the colonial government for money to rebuild it. And John Strachan is like, he's like, that's for the establishment.
Yes.
And their argument is like, Presbyterians are like, well, hang on, the establishment's for a Protestant church. We're the established Church of Scotland. So we're technically established too, because we're
part of the UK.
We're part of the UK, and there's a lot of Scottish people here, and that kicks it off.
Yeah.
So I think what you see what happens with Strachan, what Strachan is living to see in the first half of the 19th century, from 1812, we'll say to like 1854. We can call it secularization, but really what the government is doing is investing in the religious, the complex ethos of the religious landscape, and making sure that all Christians have a sense of, like, it levels the playing field a little bit.
He's really a character.
He writes his own autobiography at 22.
And,
he gives policy advice to Brock and to Schaeff and to Proctor. He writes William Wilberforce, the great abolitionist in England, says to defend Britain's relationship with the indigenous, saying you have to understand how bad American were to the indigenous. It's like we're actually helping to protect these people's rights as well, because the Americans have been so vicious to them. And so to go to the famous abolitionist, he's like, we need to protect these people, and this is what we're doing.
Where would because we're getting near close.
Yes.
And what would you like to leave us with about him? I mean, here we are today, secular state, whatever, declining influence of the church or the established church. What do we want to remember about him? Why is he memorable?
He's memorable, one, again, because his fingerprints over all of what we would consider sort of the DNA of Ontario culture. And then we can make the argument, how much did Ontario influence the rest of Canada? So he is a huge part of pre-Confederation Canada. 1812, what many people debatably think is the sort of the beginning of Canada, this war with America, and then dies in the year of Confederation, again, as we said before. So he is all over the building blocks of society up to really when we start to see Canada as a country coming in.
And once you build these institutions,
they don't go away. They change. But we're building on. So even if you tear something down to build something new, the foundation of that original place is still there. It's still influencing the structure of it. There's that old sort of joke, and again, it's somewhat apocryphal, that do you know why, rockets are only a certain width? Like even rockets that go all the way to the moon, they can only be a certain width because they have to be transported by a train.
Yes.
And so the train track is. And how wide is a train track? Well, it's the same size as the Roman roads that they would ride. There's the rut, so they balance that out. So the point being is a rocket can only be as wide as a horse's butt.
Right.
And that's the weird way in which these older sort of modes of transportation impact the very modern age. We're still kind of constrained by these limits. So this is a man that spoke, again, go back to the beginning of this episode, when I was talking about naming the voices in the head. You want to talk about Canada, you have to name John Strachan as one of the designers, one of the providers of the early DNA of what would become Canada, even as it moved far away from his visions. Because again, he was trying to create a wee Britain, and Canada has that British European sensibility for sure.
It does.
But we also have a lot of the American influence, much to his chagrin.
Yeah.
And that becomes.
But had it not been for him and some of the other church officials that were his contemporaries.
Anybody who's at the University of Toronto has to thank John Strachan for their education.
Yeah. Well, James, it's been enlightening. I mean, I've learned a lot, and we could go on and on.
And I want to learn more about the strong pedagogy that you guys are like, we're going to get into some educational theories.
So I got you. Well, that was a gotcha. I got you on one.
You got me.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
We will have more information about James on the show notes, including some details about his latest book, which is called Overlooked. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you want more information about the series podcast, please have a look on storiesof1812.com. Once again, thank you, Jim Valen, there behind the microphone, who you can't see, for doing all the technical wizardry on this, and we will see you the next time.